Right, a very, very warm welcome to you both. Amy Kane, Sarah Honor, two Royal Air Force officers, two international rugby players. A huge pleasure, genuinely a huge pleasure to have you here with us today, largely to talk about sport, how that links to operational effectiveness, and particularly that journey, because you're at the pinnacle of your game at the moment. But actually, a lot of people will be watching this will be going, how do I ever become a Sarah or an Amy? So I guess my first question is, why rugby? You rowed, which, however brutal that is, you don't get mashed by forwards trying to take chunks out of you. And you were right at the centre of the pack, and you moved from the centres in there.
Yeah.
Why rugby?
You go for it.
No, you go for it.
Okay,
I think yours is more interesting as you come from rowing, I suppose.
Okay, so used to row as a child, played all the sports, but the Olympics was ultimately my goal. So rowing, that was my vehicle to get there. Cut a long story short, final year of uni, was still rowing all the hours and good at it, was being competitive, going to under 23 GB training camps, but was ultimately miserable, hated it. At college, I was fortunate enough to meet Danielle Waterman, who was an international at the time, but also coaching the girls' rugby team there alongside her career. We then crossed paths in my final year of Loughborough Uni, and she was a bit of a mentor of mine, helped me when I was rowing, cope with nerves and competing at an international stage as a junior. And she was like, what's wrong? I was like, no, I'm so miserable. Like I don't know if I want to row anymore, but I love competing. I want to get to Olympics, but ultimately I'm hating the process of it. And at that point I started to think, okay, if I'm not enjoying the process, if I did even make it to an Olympics in 3-4 years time, would I enjoy that moment? She was like, right, okay, row to this point, I'll put you in touch with some rugby clubs, play rugby, keep up your fitness and see if you miss rowing. First rugby session, rocked up in a pair of trainers, and one of the girls was like, what size shoe are you? I was like, size 8. Oh, here's a pair of boots, wear some boots until you get yourself sorted. That alone I couldn't believe, because in rowing it is dog eat dog. You don't really help out your teammate. Because
I've encountered some rowers and they're not the nicest, actually.
No, they're like ultimately your competitor as well. So I couldn't even believe this, and I just loved it. I had met Amy when I was a rower, so we were pals since college really, then we were both at Loughborough Uni together, and then ultimately end up at Lichfield Rugby Football Club, and just the sense of belonging, the variedness in training, the camaraderie, I just loved it. I didn't miss rowing one bit and kind of never looked back.
Bearing in mind, Bonner is like the most bubbly human in the world, so when she was miserable, it was very noticeable.
We were talking about that outside, weren't we?
Town.
You know, exactly what we were talking about outside. You know, some people just lift the mood of place. But if they are that sort of person, my goodness, you feel it when they don't. But just quickly before we hit the other story, but surely to the outside observer, you'd imagine that a rowing team is a team.
Yeah.
And therefore, you'd imagine that would have the same sense of camaraderie. Is it because actually there are some reserves who might make it in, therefore it's actually a very individual sport?
Yeah, now, if rowers are listening, they're probably going to shoot me. A large percentage of your season as a rower is in an individual scull, or you do a lot of individual efforts and training to just rack up that mileage. And it's only before your racing season that you get seat raced into your crew boats. I think if I had my time again and gone to the States for university, they do a lot of 8s, and even their individual training they do as sort of like team competitions and things. But even in a crew boat, ultimately in the middle of a race, you're absolutely shattered. Like any ounce of energy you have is literally going into your next stroke. You can't even communicate. And you're communicating very different ways, like by like feel and how you're going and feel of the water. Whereas rugby is totally different in that even in the gym, there's camaraderie. Even on the pitch, when you're doing your main session of the week, you're constantly chatting, you're constantly communicating, feeding off of others' energy. Just there's differences within it. Because
it also, I knew a guy at university who did a lot of rowing, and his story was always resonated with me, that when I did cross-country running when I was at school, if I didn't throw up when I hit the finishing line, I knew I hadn't pushed myself hard enough.
Yeah.
And he said, it's exactly the same, that last ounce of energy. And I went, I'm not sure. And I went playing team sports. Yes, you're draining the tank, but it never feels quite that same.
Yeah. Nail on the
Horrible.
head. Yeah.
So, Amy, you're because you started rugby a lot earlier, didn't you?
Yeah, massive rugby family. So played from the age of about 5. Started off at tag rugby, then moved on to contact. And yeah, started out on the backs and just slowly worked my way forward till I found myself on the front row. Yeah.
But that's an odd way round, isn't it? I think you've described as you got bigger, you moved into the middle. But you know, they're so completely different roles. It feels like, and to be having nothing like the experience, but having served as my early days as a hooker, I hated it. You got both your arms locked away. You're completely at the mercy of everything that's happening in front of you. And you are also the point man when it comes to hurling that ball in one of the 2 set plays that you've got to get to within an inch right. And even if it's not your fault, you're to blame.
Yeah, definitely. I think hooker, we are a unique breed of human. Definitely, you've got to be pretty crazy to, as you say, go into that scrum. If you get pushed backwards, it almost feels like you're going to break your neck sometimes. But I guess I quite enjoy that. And the hooker role is so pivotal for a team. If you have a bad hooker and you end up getting no set piece, the team has no ball, it can greatly affect the game, can't it? So everyone always gives like the 10 the plaudits, but the 10 isn't getting the ball if I'm not throwing the ball in properly or getting the ball back at scrum time. So it is kind of almost that high pressure position. But
so I get the whole throwing the ball in bit, but how pivotal is the role of hooker to getting the ball? Because it feels like you've got 1 foot forward, you've got to hook it, so you're probably not going to be putting 100% of your effort into pushing the opposition. So you're relying a lot on everybody around you, the timing of the call, getting that push together. How pivotal is it, that relationship between you and your hooking versus just the brute force of the pack behind you? Yeah,
it's almost like as a front row, we always tell the back 5, like, you guys just push as hard as you can, and us as a front row will kind of control that energy. It's definitely become a lot more technical now with different angles and stuff like that. But yeah, I think that it's a good relationship between the hooker and the 9 as well. So the 9's putting the ball in when you want it, essentially, and not just going, here it is, now try and lift your foot off the floor when you maybe weren't quite so ready to do that. So yeah, that's kind of the key relationship in that as well.
And how much of the scrum is psychological versus physical? And that probably applies to the game as well, but let's look at the scrum initially. And I mean that by that sense of anybody who's done sport, there's moments where you just grit your teeth and go, this is it.
Yeah, it's definitely not a comfortable place to be, especially depending on how dominant you are as well. But I think it's one of those ones as a forward pack, we always go, it's a maximum of 8 seconds. You've just got to dig in for 8 seconds. And if you're uncomfortable, the likelihood that the opposition is even more uncomfortable if you're doing your job properly is the key to that, really. And
how much the balance is between individual physical specimens versus you performing as a team, a tight-knit team? How does that, because you can have some gorillas in there, but if they don't know how to make it work, the scrum gets lopsided, it gets unstable, and therefore you lose. So it does feel there's some of it is about how you operate as a pack together, not just about how big you are and how strong you are.
Yeah, we kind of talk about, say we had a massive rock here, and you had 8 people, so your forward pack, and it was like, right, we need to try and lift this rock up. If you all individually, one at a time, tried to lift it, you wouldn't be able to lift it. But if all 8 of you are lifting at exactly the same time and creating the force at the same time, then you will be able to lift it. So it is definitely like how you can generate the force, but it's got to be together, because if you've got 1s and 2s working at different times, then it's not going to work.
And how does the relationship with the backs and the forwards work? Because it feels... Rory was always stuck on the wing, you know. I said I was hoping he'd be here, but doing his fingernails and making sure his eyebrows were okay and waiting in the off chance he get a ball. And he might not see the ball for most of the match, whereas the forwards are always involved. What's that? How does that relationship work?
That's a good question. I mean, do you know what I love? If you've had a really good scrum and the backs come in to celebrate, I just love that. I'm like, yeah, they appreciate our hard work.
Yeah.
But I think
Even when they come rushing in and push you over and claim that they get the credit.
Yeah. You're just trying to not black out and they're like shoving you all over the place.
Yeah. I guess the mark of a good team is that blend of forwards and back play, and when you see forwards in those outer channels running great lines off the backs and things like that, that is a really good mark of a team.
We still have the banter of like, we're off doing set piece and training and they're talking about their feelings and like you said, doing the hair and stuff.
Yeah.
Isn't it? There's still definitely that banter, especially like we've had like savage maul session and then the backs have just been like kicking to each other. It's like, oh yeah, well I would love to be out there just kicking a ball, but
Yeah, there's times that I'll look at that and be like, I don't know, I'm not a back.
Yeah.
Do you still, does that, because I remember when I was playing, the first hit hurt. After that, the game was absolutely fine. But I know you still put your body on the line. Is that still the same? Is it still, you've got to just get into the game, have your first couple of hits, and then your body's sort of ready? Or because you do it so much, because you're professionals, you've gone past that?
Yeah, not necessarily for me a pain thing. It would be more once I've caught the ball off kick-off, usually I'm in a space that kickers would kick to, or once I've made that first hit, mentally I'm like, yeah, I'm in it. That would probably be my go-to rather than a pain exposure thing. It's just more to get myself in the game. Once I've had that involvement, I'm good.
And what I love about sport is that at times it just makes you fizz. What's your greatest moment? Could be individually, can be team, that you looked around you and went, I'm just glad to be alive. What was that on the rugby field or off it? But what was your...
I think for me, like one of my greatest rugby moments was beating Ireland in Ireland on St. Patrick's Day to win a Six Nations Grand Slam. And it was just like, because at the time it was whoever won the game.
I thought you were going to say France, because you were walking around goading the French, weren't you?
You've got to goad the French, they deserve it. But yeah, no, that day in Ireland, and it was whoever won the game was going to win the Grand Slam. So to do it on St. Patrick's Day and enjoy a nice Guinness after the game was probably mine.
Yeah, mine would also be an Ireland game. Scotland hadn't qualified for a World Cup in 10 years before the last World Cup. This wasn't the qualifying match, but it was the match that either team needed to win to get through to the final qualification, which was against Colombia. So not to be arrogant, but
you'd expect to win it.
So this was the crunch match, and we won it in the 82nd minute with a penalty kick. And that was just, for the past 4 or 5 years, that goal we'd all been working towards had clicked and happened, and we'd qualified to the next round to get to a World Cup ultimately. And that was huge, and that was beating Ireland as well.
And in terms of worst moments, because I don't want to pitch you against each other, but you touched on it there, Scotland has a way to go still on the international stage, whereas England, they're the best team in the world at the moment. You know, there's lots of teams that are close, but when you take to the field, when you're on your game, it doesn't look like anybody else can get you. How does that do? Do you feel that you know, not resentful, but is there a sense of, I wish we could be that good? Because there is a place in the pecking order at the moment, and I don't want to be too disparaging, but when Scotland and England take to the, it looks like it's a foregone conclusion. And I don't mean that nastily. Any sport is.
Yeah. No, and I think that's just a matter of fact of where the game is. England were definitely leaders in professionalising the women's game, and the girls now have been contracted for significantly longer than any of the other unions within the home nations. And we're playing catch up, but ultimately without the RFU doing that, it wouldn't have gave the other unions a kick up the butt to be like, actually, we need to invest in the women's game, and we've still got a way to catch up. And kind of touching upon rowing, I ultimately rowed because I wanted to get to Olympics, whether I enjoyed the process or not. That taught me a lot in kind of my rugby journey, and what do I want from it. I want to enjoy every moment. I want to be passionate about it, and actually pulling on that Scotland jersey, win or lose, that is what gets me up. That's what keeps me motivated. I just love it, and I play for the girls and I play for my country. And yeah, there's some absolutely low times doing it, and we've had more losses than wins, but ultimately the way we've progressed through the past few seasons makes it so worthwhile. And yeah, there's times you're like, I wish we could be as dominant as Red Roses. It is coming. I really do believe that. It will just take time. And if my little involvement is to help the girls coming through to take Scotland to that level, then I'm happy.
It's also, you talked a bit about the pride in the jersey, and I think you famously stand to attention. A part of that is the military piece. But it feels there's some similarities there. I still find myself fiercely patriotic, largely because I do a lot of work with the veteran community, and the 80th anniversary of D-Day, last few veterans around. We had a 103-year-old here, veteran of the Second Colin Bell, pilot of Mosquitoes, and he's still very erudite, and it's just a privilege to see some of those people. But I do wonder, that pride in the shirt, it also resonates, pride in the Royal Air Force, and because part of your commissioning is about serving your country, and it feels like there's a bit of a standard, a bit of a stream there. So you're both wearing Royal Air Force Rugby Union jerseys. You have come from the inter-services match, which in years gone by we used to get pretty trounced by the Army. I watched the match this year, and it was a pretty close match for a good part of it. Why the Royal Air Force? And how does playing sport elite level in the Royal Air Force feel compared to international? What sort of difference is there, both in camaraderie, physicality, professionalism, the lot?
I think it's quite funny, actually, when you said why the Air Force, because I joined the Air Force and Bonner had always gone, I want to join the military, but she wanted to join the Navy.
What?
And I randomly turned up at her house the day she was filling in her Navy enrolment. And I was like, do not join the Navy. Do not do it. Join the Air Force now. So she went from literally filling in the form for the Navy to filling in the form for the Air Force, just because I just happened to turn up at her door.
Power of influence.
Yeah. So,
and a bit of fate and luck, really.
Yeah. Told her she didn't want to be at sea for 6 months living in a bunk bed on a ship, I think. But whether that's true or not, if that would have happened, who knows? But here we are now.
So that,
I think for me, so my dad's in the Air Force. When I joined Lichfield Rugby Club, we had a few Air Force girls playing. They actually convinced me to join the reserves just so I could play for the rugby team. But turns out, me and another friend, Lucy and I, we both did that. So we joined the reserves, thought, we actually might like this a bit more seriously. So then we ended up joining full time as well. But for me, it was no question. I was always just going to join the Air Force. But my dad was in the Army initially, and my brother's now in the Army as well. So it's a bit of a family rivalry there.
And what skills do you think that you learn on the rugby field that resonate with what? Because our military these days isn't just a trophy; it has to go out and do the business and operations. As we discussed before we came in here, I'm a huge fan of the roller sport. But where do you see the parallels? What are the things, attributes that you think that you need in a team, particularly international level, that resonate with your experience in the military?
I think it's kind of like the values of rugby and the values in the military. They cross over so much, whether that's discipline, leadership, the ability to communicate under pressure, all those kinds of things that you can work on as an individual that can affect a team, which resonate, whether that's your team rugby-wise or team within the Air Force. I think those are like the key ones that I would say.
Yeah, and it's that working under pressure, which we do week in, week out, and then that amplifies in international. That is quite tricky to sort of like reenact in a work environment. But actually it goes hand in hand when we do deploy into those high pressure situations. And another thing we've spoke about is like the power of influence on a day-to-day, how whether your mood is good or bad can affect your team. Or if I come in and I'm just not feeling it, I know about 5 other people within that team are then going into that next training session or that match a bit downbeat. Or if I show my nerves as a leader, that will heavily impact my team. And that, again, is so transferable to the workplace with your team in the Air Force, whether it's on deployment or working at home. That awareness of how you come across, how you convey and communicate is really important.
Because a lot of people seem to often focus on the physical side, just keeping fit, resilience, whatever. And you go, yeah, that's one dollop. But as you say, my experience of operations, a lot of our people now spend a lot of time on operations. So as you say, some people come in feeling a bit down someday. Sometimes they need a bit of a hug. Sometimes, and as we were discussing before, there's particularly the elite level of the game, you do quite a lot of studying around psychometrics to make sure that you understand why some people need different help than others. How does that translate onto the rugby field?
Yeah, I think it's also understanding what people's strengths are. So we talk about, say, the yellow people who are really energetic all the time, social, always want to make sure everyone's having a good time. So when there is a bit down, you might go try and find a yellow, be like, right, can you bring the energy? And they love that. That's what they want. That's their super strength. Or if you need something done, you need it done now. You might find a red person that's quite direct, that you know just going to get the job done as quickly as possible. Or a blue person that's very logical. So if you need something that's going to be very well thought out, that is probably going to happen very well, you find a blue person. But on the flip side of that, it's knowing how to communicate to those people, whether that's on the pitch or off the pitch. Some people might need to be spoken to in a different way to get the best out of them. Like I'm quite a red person, so you can tell me pretty straight, and I'm happy with that. Bonna's a bit more yellow and green. She might need to be a bit nicer to her to get the best out of her, but I think that's also the good thing about rugby, is you have all these different personalities, different body shapes, all that kind of stuff. That there's generally a place for you in rugby, whether you're tall, whether you're short, whether you're strong, whether you're fast. I think that's always been one of the biggest drivers as to why I've loved the game, because you meet people within rugby that you would never meet in normal life, and you would never be friends with them because you would never have crossed paths. But you meet in a rugby team and you become the best of friends. And that's what I quite like about in the Air Force team as well. People from all different professions, whether it's a nurse or air
different
traffic.
ranks, it's different trades, it's the whole...
100%. And on that, I think that's why sport and the services is so important. Like, when would you communicate with a squadron leader in admin, for example? When you go back to your day job and you're thinking, I don't know how to get my head around this, pick up your phone because you got the number, you're having a drink with them the week before, or you're putting your body on the line for them. And I think that fundamentally is the power of sport, that we could be, you create more efficient work systems and things, because you know who you can communicate with, regardless of rank, regardless of profession. It's a really good way to be more aligned, more cohesive.
A lot of people talk about, because the danger is sometimes people wear rank as a sort of badge of honour, rather than actually, most of rank, it's just that you have more responsibility and accountability. You have to make more decisions, but the only way to make decisions is informed. So you need your people to be able to talk to you, to relate to you. The trouble is, all too often in the rank structure, that gets lost. And I think the beauty is you're all levelled. Once you're in a rugby pitch, it doesn't matter what your rank is. I mean, it is interesting. Some of my army colleagues, when they play on the team, it was all sir, and you go, because they just couldn't get their head round being first named away from the working environment. Whereas the Air Force have traditionally been, don't embarrass me on a station, but we're all in here together. We've got a shared responsibility. Yeah,
and I think it's quite good, because people within our team, there's different leadership roles, or people take on different responsibilities, and rank really doesn't come into it in that sense, does it? And it's like there's no rank in sport, and I think that's
and
really
those leadership roles, do they just evolve, or are you nominated, or is natural? Because some people's personalities are naturally a bit more drivers, and therefore they would naturally. How do the leaders emerge? Is it for the coaches decide? Is it you as a team decide? Is it personality based? How does that?
Our captain at the minute has been the captain for quite a few years. She does an amazing job. I don't know whether I think she was probably chosen by the coach, to be honest with you. But I think if you asked any of the girls who would you want to be your captain, they probably would say the same person. So probably just naturally emerged as the leader of the team.
But you've got sort of other leaders on the field, haven't you? So it's not just the captain of the team. It's also you've natural leaders of packs or backs, or there are leadership voices in the team. Yeah,
definitely. I think especially within a rugby team, you're always going to have, say, a line out leader, like a scrum leader, or someone who focuses on breakdown or defence and attack and stuff like that. And normally, because it's one of their super strengths, and that's something that they can pick up on a lot easier within a game if there's an issue of why do they keep running around us, or why they're getting through the middle. Someone will have the answers probably on the pitch, and we'll be able to communicate that the best way possible to get the information out to the wider group.
And so just tactically, you catch the ball, you throw the ball. Who decides the moves when you're actually...
It's her fault. So if it goes wrong, it's her fault.
You're the wrong place, the wrong
Absolutely
time.
I've always thrown the ball in the right place, I'm telling you. If it's gone wrong, it was the wrong call.
I'd beg to differ, but we do make a good team. So.
It must be strange playing together, though. The rare times you play together. Club rugby, you play for different club sides. International, you play for different sides. Air Force, you get drawn together rarely, I suspect.
Yeah, we used to play clubs together. So I used to play for Harlequins. I only moved to Tigers this year. So we did it for a couple of years, didn't we, at Quins together, which was nice. But yeah, at Air Force it is a bit strange, isn't it? And we're kind of collaborating our ideas on how we want the lineup to run, because we don't have a lot of time together and with the team. So it's all about just trying to get it simple.
But that segues quite nicely onto one of the challenges in the military is how do you get sport at the grassroots level, enough people interested that provides the bottom of the pyramid from which people could emerge. And with it's less than 20% of the RAF membership are female. Rugby, you need 15 people at least. I know for squash, trying to get a 6-lady squash team together was bloody difficult on a station. And therefore, the whole question, if you're not getting enough people to play, how on earth do you generate enough people who are good enough to play for our Royal Air Force squad? And the danger is, therefore, that there becomes a really big gap between what you do at international level, what you do at club level, and what you do at RAF level. How does that work?
I think the Air Force must have been about 5 years ago. They set out like a 5-year plan, and that was all it was actually more than 5 years ago now. It was from about 2017. And that was a real switch from that point of, it used to be people could just turn up on game day and that would be fine because we just needed numbers. But now there's all camps throughout the year. You need to be available for the whole week of, say, the inter-services games and stuff like that. So there has definitely been more buy-in, I'd say, from higher up to allow people to come in and actually immerse themselves in the whole week so we can have a better output on the pitch. And just generally in the camp as well, it's become a lot more professional in terms of we get better S&C support, better medical support. People are getting access to stuff outside of camp. So it's not just, say, the 20 days we have together. It's what you're doing outside as well. And trying to encourage people to get down to civvy rugby. So they're actually playing rugby more as well. It's been quite crucial.
Yeah. And also, rather than girls sort of gearing up for inter-services a couple of weeks beforehand, we start August, September, and there's that drive and there's that buy-in that we've got inter-services. This is our big competition of the year, and the training doesn't just start a week before. Prep starts.
But how do they get match
September.
practice? I mean, you're based at, I don't know, Lossiemouth. You like playing rugby, but there aren't 18, 20 female players up there. So do they have to play for a local club side?
Yeah, so this is where we're reliant upon like civvy teams and local club sides to provide that 80 minutes a week to get match exposure. As you alluded to before, we just don't have the female numbers in the military, and then of that to get them into rugby is difficult despite it being such an amazing sport. So we are reliant upon girls. Okay, if you're committed to in services and want to have a shot and put your hand up, then you need to be getting your club rugby week in, week out.
And how would you, because I mean part of the reason we're doing this is to try to inspire a next generation of people coming through, particularly those people who join the service, who see you as, quite rightly, iconic role models, but you can seem a million miles away from the level that they're at. Yet behind those eyes is exactly the same person. You've been through that journey. What would be your message to people to get hooked up? What can they expect to get from rugby rather than at a distance? They just see themselves getting beaten up every weekend and it seems hard to get involved. What's the carrot? What is the...
Oh, I mean, we spoke about this before. I'd say that just the camaraderie. The sport is so good in terms of you always have a laugh. There is a position for everybody. Ames mentioned it before, whether you're tall, short, strong, quick, there is quite literally a position for you. It's such an inclusive, open environment, and and you know that the girls have got your back.
I think if you ask any rugby player, why do you play rugby? It's normally the people, like the friends you meet. That's what keeps you in the game, I suppose, more than the game. Obviously, we love the game, but it's definitely the people that are the driver and the reason why you maybe stick around a bit longer than you might do.
But I think that's the stick in. It's trying to get people in on the front step, because I think a lot of people, for some years, they didn't allow, it was touch rugby, and because of all the worries about head injuries and stuff like that. It is the only rugby we really see regularly is international, and that's quite ferocious. And you could see people were about to start going, I'm not sure that's for me. Whereas from my experience, and I must be from yours as well, that actually even grassroots rugby provides a lot of those ingredients that you love about the game.
Yeah.
And if it is a way for people to find out a bit more about themselves and to invest in themselves, and there is a path to get them through if they want to, why not have a go?
Yeah, I think like as people, we want to feel like we add value or that we have purpose, and I think no matter who you are within a rugby team, you can always add value and have a purpose. So that's why I think anyone should just give it a go, because you are going to find a spot somewhere.
Yeah, and it's a really good way to keep up your fizz. You don't realise that you're running about half the time. And actually, in the grand scheme of your training week, you do very little contact. And by the time it gets to game day, the contact that you do, you're so full of adrenaline, you don't really notice it until the next day. So there is so much more benefits to it that kind of outweigh any negatives that you might have in your head.
And how much do you think is transitioning up to where you are now, at the very peak of the game, how much of that is hard work? How much of that is skill? How much of that is your build, that you're perfect for a lock, you're perfect for a hooker? What's that blend, that, because a lot of people, to get to elite sport, people sort of, oh yeah, they were always good at school. And you go, most of the elite sportsmen I've ever met work bloody hard at it, actually.
Yeah, I think like your story is probably a bit more unique because you came into the game a bit later, didn't you? So, you came quite fresh, just this tall person that was running around like a legless giraffe, but you worked hard and yeah, I think I don't know if you want to expand on that.
Yeah,
I think it was like your desire to learn, wasn't it? Like because she's quite competitive as well. It was like,
but that's what she brought in. That sounds like what Sarah brought in. She brought in the fact that you're competitive. You want to make Olympics. You brought into the fact that you already knew how to push yourself to the very limit.
Yeah.
So you were used to the commitment that entailed.
Yeah.
The ingredient, it seems to me, that you hadn't got was the enjoying it.
Yeah.
And what rugby seems to have given you is it knits the whole thing together.
Yeah. You've said this before in a team talk, and it's like you can't outwork a team or somebody that's enjoying it because they don't see it as work.
No.
And I think that's probably why we've been so successful and Touchwood are still playing at that international level, because we just enjoy it so much. There are times you're like, you question it. Through the rainy winter nights, and sometimes matches you're like, this isn't going our way, but ultimately for the majority of the time we just enjoy it. And I think you can transfer that to any aspect of life. If you enjoy what you do, you stick into it, you give that extra 10%, and you are willing to work hard and do the extra hours to fine your skills and so on. Do
you think, because the game has become more professional now, you are professional contracts, how do you think that's changed the game? Because, and I mean, obviously it'll be good for crowds, it's good for investment or whatever, but also that sense of doing it for the fun of it. People like Rory said, it suddenly became a job, and it became much more competitive because you are now fighting for position with other people. What do you see as the pros and cons in the women's game for it now turning professional?
I think previously people obviously had to work alongside playing rugby, so they were getting up at say 5 a.m. to get the gym in or get a running session in, then going to work, and then after work going to training, which you might not finish till say 9 o'clock at night, then you've got to drive home, but your local rugby club might be an hour away, so you're getting home at 11, you've still got to eat dinner, and then you're up at 5 again to go to the gym the next day. So I think it's not necessarily that we have more time on pitch, it's more that outside of it you you can recover better, you can eat better, you can spend more time on the analysis side. So I think like the finer detail of women's rugby now, like it's so much better, isn't it? Like you have that time. I know like even at England camp now, we're in for weeks and weeks and weeks on end together. So that time you have together, whereas previously it was like you turn up on the Thursday, team run on the Friday, play on the Saturday, then go home again Saturday
But I was
night.
thinking particularly because, the Simon Brailsford effect, that, incremental gains, that, some of the international, certainly the men's game, some of them got irritated for a while because there were people going, well, if you eat this thing here and don't do that and have this meal here. And they went, where's the fun in that? Because everything was being analysed to get an extra 0.1% out of you, which objectively I get, but risk taking the very heart out of what the sport was. Is that something that you're seeing in the game now, or?
I think kind of we might have gone for a bit of it's my job now, so you've lost the love, or you can get quite robotic in terms of you eat the same food every day. But I think as we're getting better and as we've been professional for longer, it is kind of learning what works best for you, and what works for you, like what works for me won't work for Bonner because we're completely different people. But it's almost like understanding
very different trainers.
Yeah, I do the bare minimum and you're out for hours. No, but I think it's kind of accepting what works for you, what gets the best out of you, and being confident to know whatever I'm doing is right for me, which won't be right for Bonner, but that doesn't mean what I'm doing is wrong or what Bonner's doing is wrong. Whereas before it was almost like everyone must fit into this one box.
Yeah. And I think as the game initially went professional, we probably had that. Where it is now, there's a realisation that there's individuals that make up a team and they all communicate differently, have different recovery strategies, have different ways of feedback, and it is becoming a little bit more individualised to meet those different preferences. I would say like the professionalisation of it has increased pressure, but then pressure is ultimately a privilege at the end of the day. And with increased crowds, increased coverage, there's increased scrutiny, but it's how you choose to deal with that and whether you actually go online and look at it or you just disregard it.
Because that must be an important part of it. I mean, I'm thinking particularly you picked up a red card, didn't you? And there was, as soon as you look at social media, you always get a whole load of people jumping on the bandwagon. My own experience of Sky News, as soon as you start, you get a whole load of people jumping on, calling your names out of the sun. How do you deal with that? Because it doesn't reflect what normal people feel, but it's written there and it's quite uncomfortable.
I think it's just important to the people that are close to you are the people that matter. So if I came off a game and on social media was saying I was rubbish and this, that and whatever, I would just go to the people. So like say my dad, like I'm very close to my dad. He's always been like a huge figure in my rugby career, still coaches now at the Air Force team. Like if he told me I had a bad game, then I'd probably accept it. And he would tell me if I had a bad game too. So I think just having a few people around you that will give you the home truths, or if you haven't had a bad game, also tell you that's rubbish, just ignore it. But I think I only really care about the opinion of my like circle. If Bob from wherever is telling me I'm rubbish and he's sat on the sofa eating chips, rubbing his belly, like his opinion doesn't really matter to me that much.
And you?
I think I've slowly learnt to become that. Amy's a really good influence in my life for reminding me of those things. I think initially one of my first internationals against Wales and Cardiff, I remember watching the game back and the commentator at the time, I butchered a 2-on-1. I was in the wide channel. I wasn't really at that point in my career that I was used to being a forward in the wide channels. Should have gave the 2-on-1, it would have been a try. Didn't. And that haunted me. And I remember the commentator at the time was, she's butchered that. That could have been the difference between Scotland winning and losing. And that like ate me up. But ultimately, going back to what Amy says, are your team still alive? Mm-hmm. Are you still enjoying it? Does your family care? Are they hung up on it? Close friends, close circle, like that's the core that you kind of have.
But again, that's like the military thing. I mean, they always talk about Thomas Edison had to fail 9,999 times to the 10,000th attempt he invented the light bulb. I firmly believe I've learned more from my mistakes in my military career than I've ever learned from the successes.
100%.
And therefore, but it's how, because the world of social media can be incredibly intimidating. Psychologically, it affects quite a lot of people, and even through music stars or whatever, they jump off it for a while. And I say that one thing, you go, yeah, but you're learning.
Yeah.
That learning experience means when that situation happens again, there'll be a little couple of other brain cells that'll be going, what options have I got here?
Yeah.
But you would never have had that unless you had that experience.
Yeah.
So it's just how do you navigate your way through? Because you learn by mistakes, and therefore you are going to make those mistakes.
Yeah.
But that makes you a better rugby player.
Oh, 100%. And the more relaxed you are, the more you enjoy it and try things. That's when I'm expressing myself. That's when I'm playing the best rugby. And Ames has a lot to do with that. Like, she's helped me kind of just do that on the pitch. And we're both notorious for, if we see it's on to kick, we're going to do it. Like,
I was shocked. There was a picture. I was doing my research of you looking. You had your arm up, looking as if you were doing a drop kick, and I went, "What is she doing?"
I would love to do a drop kick and a goal. I'm going to have to do one before I retire, 100%.
I guess my final sort of questions around this are more. You are, whether you like it or not, you are role models for the sport, and with that carries a degree of responsibility. How do you see you manifesting that? You've talked a little bit about encouraging and helping others into the game, but so part of this is you being the best version of you can be, but also you're in RAF jerseys. We are trying to promote RAF sport. How do you wear that mantle of role model, and what does it mean to you, and how do you feel, what does good look like in 10 years' time for women's rugby based on what you can do today?
Yeah, I think being a role model is definitely one of those things that as women's rugby players we've had to kind of get used to, because say when my first cap for England, there was 1,000 people in the crowd. Then you go to Twickenham this year, there was 50 odd thousand people. So I think as players we're very aware that is now a huge part of our job, and we'll always spend time after games meeting fans, signing autographs, and I think that's kind of what sets us apart from the men's team, is that we still try and make ourselves available, because at the end of the day it is our job to inspire the next generation to pick up a ball or just play sport in general. We'd be happy with, but if it's a rugby ball, all the better. But that's definitely a huge part of our job, and the more people we can get involved in the game, the better our game's going to be, the better England's going to be. So yeah, we do take that part of our job quite seriously now, which is something that we've definitely had to get used to.
And then I think touching upon the Royal Air Force and that other hat that we wear and represent on the international or club stages, probably the amount of calls or messages on social media that we've both had in terms of how do you balance the two. My daughter is looking at a career in the military. Is this possible? And I think that's also another part of our role that I probably didn't realise that we had such a kind of presence, but we do, and it's actually really rewarding to see that we've got young girls coming through signing up, and guys into the military, because they see the values of it and a way that they can crack on with a career that also rewards high level sport, whether that's playing internationally or for the Royal Air Force.
Because you are pioneers for the game. I mean,
Yeah.
you know, and I'm not trying to be melodramatic. You know, when you look back in history at this time, you know, the advance in female rugby to the point where we discussed before, where it looked a bit tokenism a few years ago. Now it's gripping. I make time to watch it because the international stage, certainly it's gripping, and you are at the vanguard of that. Therefore, you are role models, and you will shape the next generation of where rugby goes.
Yeah, and I think everything that we're doing now as say England players, we're trying to better it so that the girls playing in 10 years' time don't have to go through the same struggles of annoying things that we have to do now. So we are constantly striving to...
What are the annoying things?
Really probably petty things. We always get compared against the men, obviously, all the time, but we always kind of say, well, we're doing the same job at the end of the day, so we should almost be provided with the same support. But it was little things like they have their initials on their kit, which we never did. So then we thought, and now we've got initials on our kit, which is something so minor, but just gives you that extra bit of value. We even get kit, which is amazing. Sometimes we used to hand it back in after camps and stuff like that. So it's more like the little petty things that are actually quite simple that I guess people from above haven't really thought about.
And
it
is
in the
the
past.
money thing an issue that grates, or is that one that you just think will come with time?
I think that is.
I'm not trying to put you in a spot,
Yeah.
but you know,
that is one that I think does great players. We are aware that in Scotland we don't bring in the same numbers as the men's team, but the investment is so worth it. Like, men's rugby's almost hit the ceiling, whereas women's rugby has so much growth and potential that investment will reap the returns in a few years down the line, and that we are worth investing in. So I think that definitely does great on us. I don't know if it's the same in the England camp.
Yeah, sort of. Obviously, like, it is how much money do we bring in to how much we get out, and obviously the men sell out to Twickenham and tickets are however much, but I think the investment that they've had, like, they're so much further down the journey than us. So if we had, I think it was my dad actually told me, it was almost like a horse and a cart. We're getting asked to move the women's rugby cart without the horse yet, and almost like, right, we'll give you a horse once you can move as quickly as the men's horse, like, cart, which already has a horse. So I don't know if that makes sense, but it makes sense in my head. But so, like,
I think so.
Yeah. So to me, like, the horses investment in the media, like, can we be on TV more, and all the different things that the men now, it's just normal for them to have that. So we don't want to get paid millions and millions, but
Nice.
But, yeah, it would be nice if we could set us up. But no, we just want the horse to give us the same investment as the men, and we probably eventually will get to the same output.
The irony is, I suspect, that your successors will reap the benefit of that, but it's the work you're doing at the moment that will create the opportunity for them to reap the benefit of it.
Yeah.
Yeah, like, a lot of the, like, media stuff is so player driven. Like, we have to create our own individual brands almost, to try and get ourselves out there, to get the team out there, whereas obviously that's kind of all taken care of for the men. But we're slowly getting there. Obviously, if we could sell out Twickenham, well, we play New Zealand later on this year, if we could get close to a sell out for that, I think it would start, like, asking more questions on that we can do it too. Obviously the ticket prices are a lot different, but yeah, it's definitely going in the right direction though compared to what it used to be. So
no, that's really the point of the question. It's definitely going in the right direction.
Oh, 1,000,000%,
it's the pace it happens,
100%,
and where the money flows, and that point about how much you lean into it, how much you lean into the investment.
Yeah. Even at club level, like, a big thing for the women's game is you have the internationals that are professional, and then the amateurs that are juggling full-time jobs. So training, you go in the afternoon, and then your main training isn't until 7 till 9 or 10 o'clock at night, because you're still catering for that blend of amateurs and professionals. And actually, if you ask the men to train at that time of night, I don't think a lot of them would.
No.
So even just changes in working hours, I guess, would be a huge difference. And by the time we leave the game, I don't know if it will have changed, but eventually it will become a job where you kind of do it in the day, and then you have your evenings to recover or crack on with other things.
The only other one I had for you, which is a bit out of sequence, but I'll ask it anyway. In football, there's a whole load of injuries that women seem to be more susceptible to than men. And they're never quite sure if it's just because nature or nurture or whatever. Are there any injuries that are becoming more prevalent in female rugby players that you're seeing that are unexpected, that are more because it's a female game?
I think, like, the ACL one's quite big, isn't it? Obviously it's huge in football, but I think it's been big in rugby for years as well.
Yeah.
I think it happens to both men and women, but like at Quins, we always had at least one person out of an ACL. We've had 2 ACLs at Leicester this year. It's just a horrific injury as well, isn't it? Which no one wants to go through, but it's been around and it happens a lot.
I was at a medical conference the other night, doing my physio a favour basically, and on it they'd reported on the past 3 seasons of women's premiership and men's premiership and the most common injuries. And in the men's, it was largely concussions and, like, shoulder injuries or surgeries. In the women's, it was knees and ankle. I don't know what that says, whether that is a genetic thing, hormonal thing. There's not that much research into it. If you look at a lot of the sports injury research throughout the years, it's predominantly done on men. So it's hard to compare and contrast. It probably needs to be another 10, 20 years of female research to actually truly understand it. But there are differences, but it's hard to say in a contact sport because there's so much variables that go on.
No, and that's why I just wondered, because in football it does seem there's a trend that
In
is
ACLs.
yeah, and you know, the training's going to be different. It's different sport, but yeah. So I just wondered if there was that sort of thing.
I think it's because we're still in that. They have the demands of professional sport now, which if you're a boy, say footballer, you've probably been in academy since you were like 4 years old, and you get used to that training load and your medical cover. You've had a good build up. Whereas like some women professionals, they might have started playing at 18. They haven't had any of that training age to get used to training load, or any injuries they've had. They probably didn't get looked after properly. I think that would be like the main difference between men's and women's, is probably what happened to you when you were younger.
So thanks very much for both of you coming along. It's genuinely, as a rugby fan, Tigers more than
Tigers.
but no, genuinely, you are pioneers of the game, and particularly RAF sport is always been huge for me. But it's a huge privilege to have particularly two icons of the game, because I'm not beating about the bush. Rugby has come so far in the last few years. You are role models for that, and it's a real pleasure to interview you both. So thank you so much for your time.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you for having us. Yeah.